My name is Lena Carter, and I grew up believing that being different was the same as being defective. My parents, Rick and Dana Carter, were the kind of people who valued appearances more than authenticity. My older sister Sophie was their golden child homecoming queen, straight A student, and the reason every neighbor smiled when they talked about the Carter girls. I, on the other hand, was the weird one. I loved books about astrophysics, wore mismatched socks, and had a laugh that echoed a little too loudly. My parents called me eccentric when company was around, but behind closed doors, they called me embarrassing. Graduation day was supposed to be my redemption. I had pushed through the bullying, the loneliness, the late-night tears. I stood on that stage with honors, wearing a medal that said valedictorian. But when I looked into the audience, I saw something that shattered me. 2 empty seats where my parents should have been. They hadn't shown up. Sophie was there though. In a bright yellow sundress, holding a phone up to her face as she filmed me with a smirk. Later that night, she posted a video online titled, "My Awkward Sister Giving the Weirdest Graduation Speech Ever." It went viral in the worst way. Thousands of strangers laughed at the way I stumbled over my words, the way my voice cracked when I mentioned my family. When I confronted my parents, my father shrugged. "You need to learn to laugh at yourself, Lena. Sophie didn't mean harm. But she did." That night, when they called me the ugly graduate over dinner, I realized something chilling. My family didn't just misunderstand me. They enjoyed humiliating me. So I left home that night. No goodbye, no tears. Just my diploma, my backpack, and a promise to myself one day they'd regret every cruel word they ever said to me. As I walked away from the house that never felt like home, I looked back once. The porch light flickered, a faint, dying glow, and I whispered to the darkness, "You'll remember me one day." That was the night Lena Carter, the weird graduate, was buried, and the woman who would rise in her place was about to become unstoppable. The first few years after I left home were brutal. I had no money, no car, and no family to call. But I had something far more powerful than pity: purpose. I worked 3 jobs: mornings at a coffee shop, evenings at a bookstore, and nights cleaning offices. I'd study between shifts, exhausted but relentless. I was determined to prove that the weird graduate could build a life her family couldn't even dream of. By 26, I'd earned a scholarship to Stanford, majoring in software engineering. My nights turned into coding marathons, my weekends into freelance gigs. The tech world was cold and competitive, but it was also merit-based. No one cared if you were the ugly sister, as long as your code worked. That's where I met Evan Reed, a quiet genius with disheveled hair, an easy smile, and a knack for seeing potential where others saw chaos. We started as colleagues, then partners, and slowly, something more. Evan believed in me before I fully believed in myself. Together, we built a start-up from nothing, a company that would eventually make us millionaires. The media called it Phoenix Tech, because it was built on the ashes of everything I'd lost. I remember the day we launched our first product, a cloud-based platform that revolutionized small business systems. Investors called it a miracle. I called it revenge in progress. One morning, years later, while scrolling through Facebook, I saw my sister Sophie's profile. She was still posting family brunch photos, still glowing with the same shallow smile. Her bio read, "Mom to 2. Lifestyle influencer. Married to my amazing husband Mark. Perfect. Plastic. Predictable." And then I saw something that made my heart race. A post from my mother. "So proud of our beautiful family. Sophie's kids are everything we dreamed of." No mention of me. Again. That same week, an email arrived in my inbox from an event organizer. The Carter Family Reunion. Hosted by Rick and Dana Carter. Celebrating family, love, and success. For a moment, I hovered over the delete button. Then I stopped, because suddenly, the timing felt divine. For 10 years, they'd erased me. Now I had the perfect chance to reintroduce myself. Not as the weird graduate, not as the daughter they mocked, but as Lena Carter, CEO, self-made millionaire, and the storm they never saw coming. I smiled at my reflection that night, whispering to the woman staring back, "It's time to go home." Little did they know, I wasn't coming back for reconciliation. I was coming for poetic justice. The night before the reunion, I couldn't sleep. 10 years of buried memories clawed their way back. Every insult, every backhanded joke, every moment I'd stood invisible while Sophie basked in the spotlight. But this time, I wasn't walking into their world as the same broken girl. I was arriving as a woman who had rebuilt herself from nothing. Evan wanted to come with me, but I told him no. "This is something I need to do alone," I said. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Then go show them who they lost." The event was held at the downtown Marriott. Chandeliers, champagne, the whole upper, middle, class fantasy. As I stepped through the doors, I could feel dozens of eyes glancing my way. My tailored navy dress shimmered under the light, and my diamond earrings, a gift from our company's IPO celebration, caught the sparkle of every camera flash. I looked like someone they'd want to know. Not someone they'd once called a disappointment. My mother, Dana, stood near the buffet table, laughing a little too loud, her hand resting on my father's arm. Sophie was there too, glowing in an expensive dress, surrounded by friends who hung on her every word. When my mother finally noticed me, she froze. The wine glass slipped slightly in her hand. "Lena," she said, her voice trembling. "You came?" I smiled, calm and composed. "Of course, I got the invitation." She blinked, clearly unsure of how to react. It wasn't the reunion she'd imagined. Sophie, of course, was less graceful. "Wow, Lena! You look different," she said, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "What have you been up to?" "Still doing those little computer things." I almost laughed. Something like that. Dad joined in, clearing his throat. "Well, it's good to see you're doing all right. Your sister's been keeping us busy. The kids just started private school, and Mark got promoted." Of course. Everything was still about them. I glanced around the room. Family, friends, old neighbors, distant relatives. All buzzing about careers, houses, vacations. No one asked how I'd been. No one cared where I'd disappeared to. But that was about to change. The event host clinked a glass and called for attention. "Tonight," he said, "we celebrate the Carter family. Their love, their achievements, and their legacy." Sophie beamed as she stepped up beside our parents. Cameras flashed. I stood at the edge of the crowd, silent, until the host added, "And of course, we're honored to have all the Carters together again, including their daughter, Lena." A hush fell. Dozens of faces turned toward me. I stepped forward, every movement slow and deliberate. "Thank you," I said. "It's good to be home." Then, with a small, knowing smile, I added, "I brought something to share. A little family surprise." The projector screen flickered to life behind me, displaying the logo of my company, Phoenix Tech International. And then, a news clip. The headline read, "Self-made CEO Lena Carter named one of Forbes' top innovators of the year." Gasps rippled through the room. My mother's face went pale. Sophie's smile froze in place like a cracked mask. I turned to face them, my voice calm but sharp. "You were right. I was different. Just not in the way you thought." For the first time in years, they had no words. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. But my plan wasn't finished yet. Because the best part of revenge isn't the reveal. It's what comes after. The silence after my reveal hung in the air like static. Every eye in the ballroom was fixed on me. The once forgotten girl who had just rewritten her family's story in front of everyone they knew. Mom's trembling hand clutched her glass tighter, her manicured smile collapsing. Dad coughed awkwardly, pretending to adjust his tie. Sophie looked like she'd just swallowed glass. I let the video roll. Clips of tech conferences, interviews, and the company gala where I'd stood beside investors and world leaders. Every moment of the life they'd told me, I'd never have flashed across the screen. When it ended, I turned, smiling softly. "That's what I've been working on all these years. The years you said I'd never make it." The crowd applauded. Polite at first, then with genuine awe. But my family, they couldn't even look at me. Mom finally found her voice, weak and shaky. "Lena, honey, why didn't you tell us? We're so proud of you." The lie tasted bitter even coming from her. I raised a brow. "You mean before or after you told everyone I was a failure?" Her face flushed crimson. Dad stepped in, his voice heavy with practiced calm. "Now, Lena, there's no need to bring up the past. We all make mistakes." "You didn't make a mistake," I said. "You made a choice." Sophie, desperate to reclaim the spotlight, chimed in. "Look, Lena, that's incredible, really. But you didn't have to make such a big scene. You could have told us privately." I smiled thinly. "Privately? Like the way you privately told everyone at your graduation party that I'd never amount to anything." "No, Sophie. This time, everyone gets to hear the truth." The host awkwardly tried to steer the conversation back to dinner, but the damage was done. My parents stood frozen as whispers swept the room. Their perfect image had cracked, right where it hurt the most. That night, I walked out of that ballroom with my head high. I didn't look back, but the next morning, the calls began. First, a text from Mom: "We need to talk. Please call us." Then, "Dad, we're sorry for how things went last night. Let's have dinner and talk this out." And then Sophie: "You didn't have to humiliate us like that. You ruined everything." I didn't reply to any of them. Days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten, old-fashioned, as if that would somehow make it more sincere. Mom had written, "We didn't know you were struggling back then. We thought we were doing what was best. Please forgive us. Family should always stay together." I read it twice. It didn't sound like regret. It sounded like damage control. But part of me, the quiet, lonely part that still remembered being that invisible girl, hesitated. Was this my moment to finally forgive? Then I saw the last line: "By the way, your sister's husband lost his job. We were wondering if you could help them out until things settle." And just like that, the H in my chest turned into fire. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted rescue. They had disowned me when I was nothing. And now they wanted to use me because I was someone. This wasn't going to end with an apology. It was going to end with poetic justice. I stared at my mother's letter for a long time, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. The ink smelled faintly of her favorite perfume, the one she used to wear on holidays when she'd smile through gritted teeth and remind me, "Don't embarrass the family, Lena." That scent had once meant home. Now, it smelled like manipulation. I set the letter down on my glass coffee table and looked around my penthouse. The skyline glowing through the floor, tip-ceiling windows, a life I had built brick by brick with no help from anyone. Every inch of it was mine, and yet, their words had managed to creep back into my perfect silence. They needed my help. After everything, I could have thrown the letter away. I could have ignored it. But no. I wanted them to feel it. The sting of rejection. The same helplessness they'd wrapped around me for years like a chain. So I came up with a plan. I called Sophie first. She answered immediately, her voice sugar-coated but shaky. "Lena, I was hoping you'd call. Mom said you might." I read the letter. I interrupted. "You need money, right?" Silence. Then a soft, practiced sigh. "It's not about money. We just want to reconnect. But yeah, things have been rough. Ryan got laid off. We could really use, I'll help," I said smoothly. "But on one condition." Her tone brightened instantly. "Anything. What do you need? Come to my company's charity gala next Friday. Bring Mom and Dad. I'll make sure you're on the guest list." "Oh, Lena, that's wonderful. They'll be thrilled." "I know they will," I said, my smile curling just enough. Because the truth was, the gala wasn't about charity. Not this year. This year it was about exposure. My company had just partnered with a major streaming platform for a new tech documentary, one centered on resilience, transformation, and the power of self-made success. And the first screening. That gala. By the time the night arrived, the ballroom shimmered with gold light and soft jazz. The air smelled of success and expensive champagne. My parents and Sophie walked in together, dressed to impress, pretending to belong. Mom spotted me across the room, eyes widening when she saw the massive poster on display behind me. From Broken to Billion, the story of Lena Hart. Her face drained of color. They watched from the front row as the film began, not a marketing piece, but a raw, unfiltered documentary. My story. Footage of my early struggles. Interviews with mentors who spoke about how I'd clawed my way out of debt and ridicule. Photos of the shabby apartment I'd once lived in, overlaid with my mother's actual Facebook post from years ago. Proud of my Sophie. Can't say the same for our other daughter. Still trying to figure her life out. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The next clip. My sister's old vlog. Laughing with friends about how I was probably living on instant noodles. And then came the turn. The awards. The Forbes cover. The scholarship foundation I'd built in my family's name. The camera cut to me speaking at a women's empowerment conference. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about freeing yourself from needing their approval. The audience rose to their feet. The applause thundered through the room. But my parents sat frozen, pale, humiliated, their perfect social facade cracking under the weight of truth. Sophie's eyes glistened with tears. Not of remorse, but rage. When the crowd finally settled, I walked up to them. You wanted my help, I said softly. I just gave it to you. Publicity, exposure, reputation, all restored. Everyone knows who you raised. Mom's voice trembled. Lena, how could you embarrass us like this? Embarrass you? I tilted my head. You embarrassed me for a decade. I just returned the favor. In 4K. I turned and walked away before they could respond, the sound of applause swelling behind me again as my name echoed through the ballroom. Outside, the city buzzed with life. The night air was cool against my skin, cleansing. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the unwanted daughter. I felt like justice. The night after the gala, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt. I'd buried that long ago. But because of something heavier. Something I didn't expect relief. For years, I'd imagined revenge as this burning fire, a force that would finally make me feel whole once I unleashed it. But now that it was done, now that I'd watched the same parents who mocked and abandoned me sit trembling in their seats, the fire inside me had quieted. All that was left was peace. Still, the story wasn't over. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer, Ethan. His tone was cautious, but there was an unmistakable note of amusement. You might want to check the news, Lena. I pulled up the article immediately. Hart's face backlash after daughter's viral documentary exposes family betrayal. Photos from the gala were everywhere. My speech was trending on social media. Clips of my parents' stunned faces had gone viral, millions of views, endless comments. Imagine disowning your own daughter and watching her become a millionaire. They mocked her for years. Now she owns the room they can't even afford to enter. That's karma in high heels. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Interview requests, sponsorship offers, partnership deals. But amid all the noise, there was one notification that caught my attention, an email from my father. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" For a long moment, I just stared at it. The same man who once told me I was disappointment wrapped in failure, now wanted to talk. I clicked it open. Lena, I watched your film again this morning. I won't lie, it hurt. But maybe we deserved it. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. I don't know what I expected from you. But I can't stop thinking about the little girl who used to bring me coffee when I worked late. I'm sorry I lost sight of her. I'm sorry I lost sight of you. I read the message twice. 3 times. And then, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, because forgiveness, real forgiveness, wasn't about giving someone else peace. It was about setting yourself free from their power. So I replied, simply, I appreciate your message. But I've moved on. I wish you both the healing I had to find on my own. Then I hit send. That evening, I drove my Porsche, the one they once saw as a symbol of my success, out of the city, into the quiet hills beyond the skyline. The sunset painted the sky gold and crimson, the colors of endings and new beginnings. I pulled over by the edge of a lake, my reflection shimmering on the surface. Not the awkward, unwanted girl they had mocked, but a woman who had built herself from ashes. The wind whispered through the trees as I whispered to myself, "You did it, Lena. You made them see." Behind me, my phone buzzed again. A message from a journalist asking if I'd be open to writing a memoir. I smiled. The story wasn't over. But now, it belonged entirely to me. As the last light of day sank into the water, I slipped on my sunglasses and whispered the final words I'd ever say about them. They taught me what pain was. But I taught myself what power feels like. And with that, I started the engine. The low, confident hum of my Porsche blending with the sound of the wind. And drove off into the night, leaving behind not my family, not my past, but every version of me that ever needed their approval.